Let me get to our guest. It is Jamie Miller. Jamie is the president and CEO of Mississippi Gulf Coast Business Council. Good morning, sir. The Gulf Coast Business Council, let me read a little bit of this, engages top executives of businesses, large and small, to be the united voice of public policy issues important to everyone along the Gulf Coast, to serve as a facilitating organization and help develop future leaders, and they have done a good job for a long time. First of all, welcome to that position and welcome to the show. How are you? It's good to have you.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning, Paul. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for hosting me.
You've been there since, what was it, August of this year?
There was a public announcement in August that I'd be joining the council. Officially did not begin until November 1, so just been on the job a little more than a month.
Tell me a little bit about it, and again, some of your experiences there too, as far as the Gulf Coast. Because when you jumped into that position, a lot of things were happening. So they didn't give you much of a learning curve, did they?
Yes. Let's start with the Gulf Coast Business Council is a private nonprofit focused on public policy. It was created by a group of concerned industry leaders, CEOs, after Katrina, to make sure the coast recovery was done in a meaningful way, that it was not just one-off projects. And so that was its nexus. Of course, since then, we've had other challenges on the coast. The Regional Tourism Commission was something that came out of that initial effort. There were other many meaningful policies that were a result of the Gulf Coast Business Council. We continue to get involved with what we believe are the most challenging issues facing the Gulf Coast. My vision for the council is to raise the profile statewide. I, recently left the Mississippi Development Authority, worked with organizations across the state, and realized the influence and significance that those regional entities have on how the state grows its economy and those regions grow their economy.
If people are asking, first of all, the need for an organization like this is one that brings people together, and we're all territorial. The Gulf Coast is famous for that. We see the results when people work together in different communities and leaders. Everybody wins. But that same mathematical formula is needed in some places of the state. It is more successful than others. But we still have a large percentage of people who are territorial as far as their possibility of acquiring some industry or whatever it happens to be. Why wouldn't that same type of organization work elsewhere in the state?
Well, it has. It does work in other parts of the state. You've got the Golden Triangle and the Link, Starkville, West Point, Columbus. You've got Tupelo, the Community Development Foundation. You've got the Area Development Foundation in Hattiesburg. You've got other very successful organizations with similar missions. The organization structure may be a little different. But you're right. You talk about trying to get regions to agree. And in my first remarks to our council, our general membership, I talked about alignment. It's not about agreeing on every issue, but there is importance in having alignment in a single voice. Cities, counties, industry motives may be slightly different, but alignment, certainly when you're taking up a cause in Jackson or in Washington, D.C., you don't need these counter voices kind of muddying the water.
You think, Jamie, that you've been able to mitigate some of when the problems do come up as far as personalities or squabbles, that you guys at the Gulf Coast Business Council have been able to maybe soften that a little bit?
Well, honestly, our goal is not to soften the squabbles. Our goal is to be transparent and bring forward data and bring light to issues that need to be addressed. So a lot of that is informing the stakeholders. I've been meeting with a lot of our local industry member organizations, some of our local leaders, mayors, county supervisors, and some of our coastal delegation, talking about what are the most important issues for the coast coming up to this next legislative session, what's happening in Washington, D.C. And so I'm hearing a lot of good, similar thoughts about what's important for the coast.
When you go back and you look at some of the key points of the success of that organization, what would you point to?
Well, I certainly would point to Katrina. I think after Katrina, every city, every company was kind of knocked to its knees. There was uncertainty about how we would move forward. I think that the industry and the business leaders and really the whole state of Mississippi was kind of rallied to the Gulf Coast. But without that kind of constant vision and kind of voice in Jackson and D.C., our recovery could look a lot different. That's not to say that the council's responsible for how well the coast recovered, but it certainly was an important aspect of it. The BP oil spill, another major man-made disaster. There was a lot of perception issues on the coast, and just we fought through that for several years, and we're still advocating for better investments with the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund. So that continues to be a top priority for our business council.
Yeah, I saw something. It was 2 or 3 weeks ago, talking about Mississippi as one of the better places to retire. We've always known that because of the people, the low cost of living, and everything else. And if you come from another state with a pretty good pension or your retirement fund in place, Mississippi is a great place with some incredible communities along the Gulf Coast and elsewhere. Low crime rate, good medical facilities in many of our hometowns across the state. And most of the people who are retired are not too worried about the schools, but in good schools if they, move their kids there with grandkids. That said, the Gulf Coast is, when you start looking at the future, a prime spot for retirement along the Gulf Coast. And that plays into the future, too, does it not?
Well, we want to attract people. I mean, obviously, in what you're describing, the communities on the coast are unique and wonderful to visit. I know you're a big fan of cruising the coast, and you've spent some time anywhere from Pascagoula, Ocean Springs, even Bay St. Louis, Biloxi, Gulfport, and you can see the downtowns and how they've have the amenities and the walkability and the restaurants and the places that you want to spend time in. We want to continue to do that. We want to grow that. Our gaming industry, obviously, has been very strong. But even the gaming general managers will tell you those folks that come in to participate in gaming also enjoy walking around downtown Ocean Springs. And so we want to continue to build on those amenities, but we have other opportunities to grow our economy, and that's by attracting people. We need a more focused talent retention and talent attraction initiative on the coast. We want those younger folks that want to come in for those high-paying jobs, and we've got to be a part of growing that base of people as well.
Yep. What's the top 3 or 2 or 1 objective as far as 2023 legislative session?
I think right now, just from spending time with people and my time at MBA, I would say Stennis Space Center is the top of that list. We need to make sure that we've got a very bright future at Stennis Space Center. Obviously, NASA's played a huge role in commercial in space flight. That industry has changed and pointed more toward commercial space flight. We need to be able to attract more of those industries. I would say the state has a Mississippi Cyber Initiative. Mississippi State's involved with Keesler Air Force Base to grow our cyber training there. Also continue to invest wisely with our Gulf Coast Restoration Fund. Probably other is continuing post-Katrina with FEMA flood maps. It's been a challenge to develop housing and other commercial structures just because of the elevated structure requirements. So those are
almost out of time.
Going to the legislature.
Want to talk more about that when the legislative session is on. Keep us in mind. Love to have you back, and we'll talk about kind of laser into some of those points a little bit more. Good to meet you, sir, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Paul. Have a great day.
You got it. Jamie Miller, President and CEO of